Hey there, guys. So, question that I've received and talked before previously on as well is one top set enough, providing you do some moderate back off sets afterwards? Now, long story short, if you're an advanced athlete, yes, you're going to find working up to a top set, providing that top set really does push you, and then your back off sets, 2 to 3 back off sets, much lighter weight, could even be 70%, and just hitting 5-6 reps, stuff like that. That's going to work. And also, if you're an athlete that's over 40, has a few years of experience, you don't have to be anywhere near advanced or things like that, but you'll find a top set followed by a few back off sets for you as well is going to probably work better than most of the other programs. Now, if you're a younger athlete, I'm going to say under 25 and things like that, will it work? Yes, but for you, is it optimal? Certainly not. So we then have to look at, practicality versus, the reality, and then what's optimal for each person. Now, having something as optimal doesn't necessarily always mean it's going to be practical. When you're structuring a program, if you go with things that are practical first, as a whole, you're going to have a much better outcome because you're starting with a true base of reality and what the world really looks like for you as an individual. So we'll start with me, and I'll use my experience as an example. For me, when I work up to a heavy top set, now we're going to look at, say, this one here, and this is in a comp prep. My heavy top set for the day was a single followed by 2 back off sets afterwards of 10 reps. Now, for me, that works really well because I've hit the top weight that I need to. I've made enough, neurological, stimulus. I've pushed hard enough to get adaptations that I need in order for strength. But at the same time, when you're going with your heavy singles or your heavy hard top sets, there's only a certain amount of cortisol that your body, wants to have in its system. If you push that too much and really tax your nervous system, like I'm saying, squatting heavy multiple times a week or, multiple sets, your chances of injury skyrocket, but also you end up racking up a whole lot of CNS fatigue. And a lot of people, forget about that. Now, when I work up to, say, a heavy single on bench and then do my 2 back off sets, the 2 back off sets on the bench press are still, I'm not going to say hard working sets, but there's still quality work involved versus a squat, for example. I'll work up to like a heavy single, either with belt or without belt, and wraps. Just, it really depends where I'm at. I'll use that as my top set, and then I'll do some lighter back off sets. And the back off sets I do for squats is a lot lighter simply because I'm trying to, I might have squats and deadlifts in the same week. So if I have 2 top sets, one for squat, one for deads, when it comes to bench press, you sort of want to even it out. I found 2, top sets in that regard, with one for squat, one for deadlift is sort of the max that I can take. If I was to dump them both onto squats, I just find that the chances of injury skyrocket because I'm more fatigued as well. You need to look at that as well. If you really push yourself on your first set, your second set's not going to be as clean, and that's where injuries and other things start to happen. I also find that working up to a single top set works well from the point of, mentally you know what you need to do and you can go in there and just get it done. Then afterwards, with your back off sets, it's more focusing on speed and technique work in order to clean up your movement pattern and restore it to basically where it should be. So the next time you come in and lift weights, it's going to move well and in the way that you expect. Using squats to develop the actual legs as itself isn't a great idea because there's too many other working components versus, if you're a strength athlete and you're competing in powerlifting, you need the squat for competition purposes. So it makes sense to obviously squat heavy, get your competition lifts on point. But then, you'll look at the rest of your training program. You can do leg press, you can do leg extensions, walking lunges. There's a whole lot of other things you can do for legs that aren't going to take away or be detrimental to the quality of the movement pattern that you need competition day. And it'd be the same thing if you're like a field athlete as well. At the end of the day, you want to focus on a particular movement that's going to make you better for your sport. So we'll just use like rugby for an example. Your squats, you'd want to have, maybe one heavy set, and then same thing again, you'd want to do some lighter back off sets where the goal is to be quite explosive, because that's going to carry across to the sport that you're doing. So you got to keep that in mind. Now, with the one top, working set and really pushing yourself, the back off sets, as I said, 2 to 3 sets, 70%, 5 to 6 reps. If you want, you could drop it down to 2 and then go for 10 reps. It's up to you. It's more about keeping that movement pattern clean and then moving on to your next exercise, whatever that may be. Now, if I was only using the top sets and 2 back off sets to try and get my lift to progress without any accessory work whatsoever, I wouldn't say that's a good idea. If you're doing the top set, 2 back off sets, and then you've got some accessories later on in the week, like a prime example is the one arm overhead press, by all means, you're still going to progress quite well, and you're not going to eat a huge road into your own recovery either. And that's something a lot of people forget. There's only a certain amount of fatigue your body can hold and work with in a productive manner before things start going wrong. And if you're looking at other sports aside from, powerlifting and things like that, working on the actual skills that you need and, specific drills, especially for selection and things like that, you want to drop some energy into those and you want to complete them with, a high level of competence, because that's what's also going to help you excel, one, as an athlete, and 2, get drafted to whatever you need. So there's a few different, approaches and ways that you need to look at training. Now, for an older athlete, you'll find, the one top set works well. 5-6 days later, you've only just recovered. Someone who's younger, under 25, they can realistically get away with 2 to 3 top sets, because the recovery is better. Just on a cellular level, generally in life, there's a whole lot less stress, less responsibilities, and just more total time and energy for recovery in general. As you get older, you don't have that luxury, and that's what I've found. So, from that point of view, if you're definitely over 40, one top set works really well. If you're an advanced athlete, same thing, one top set works really well. If you're an advanced athlete and you're under 25, then, play around with it. You can probably get away with 2, maybe 3 top sets. But if you're just, an everyday sort of athlete and you're on the younger end of the spectrum, then yeah, by all means, 2, 3, even 4 top sets, you're going to recover well. It's just, your younger recovery's there. So when it comes to the rest of your training volume, especially with squats, later on in the week, just hit, 3 to 4 sets of leg presses or hit some walking lunges. You might decide to do some front squats, things like that. Just pick 2 accessory movements and just do them later on at the week. Push them to a decent scale, 8.5 out of 10 sort of thing, because you still need to recover enough again to be able to come to your top working set the next week without, being under the weather and without being, too sore, because, you're trying to work on your top level strength. But yeah, one top set in that regard will work, providing you're doing your accessories. And then it just also comes down to recovery and looking at other weaknesses you may have. A lot of people often neglect other assistant exercises in favor of just more total volume for the lift that they're doing. An example would be, they do 4 sets of 5 on squats and it takes them like an hour and a half, versus, if they had have just done one top set, hit 2 lighter back off set, they would have had all this extra time available in order to train other muscle groups, as well as work on other weaknesses that would have made them a better athlete as well, and then still minimize the amount of cortisol that their body's producing. So there's numerous things that you need to take into consideration. I personally, for me, one top set works really well for my squats or my deads. Bench press, 2 top sets because I'm just better at it. But then again, it's just years of experience, and that's my take.